Hello everyone, welcome to Animator's Breakfast, which is a podcast where we talk to people who work in the animation industry about shows or animation that inspired them throughout the years. And now I'm just going away from my guest to finish his cup of tea to introduce himself. Today I've got Dan Nosella with me, who is the series director on Doc McStuffins for Brown Bag Films. Did I get that right, Dan?
That's correct, yes. Season 5.
Season 5.
Season 5, yes.
What's next for Dan? And
Season 10, probably. I hope not. Jesus.
They're going to let go of you for 4 seasons.
Yes, and then bring me back for season 10. I hope not. Now, honestly, we'll see. I don't know. I'm just focused on getting this season done, delivered, and making sure everything is in good nick. So beyond that, we'll see. Hopefully something really amazing.
Only you can tell that. You've got all the material there. I hope this hopefully will work through. I'm sure it will.
I'm sure. I'm not.
You guys just won the, as far as I know from Animation Dingle, the Children's Choice Award.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. We don't. You shouldn't do this for awards, right? People are fixated on winning awards, but if it's a children's choice as the audience, people who actually watch the show and get something from the show, that is, I think, more meaningful than just some sort of politically motivated industry vote, where we don't like Disney, we're not going to vote for them, or we're all going to vote for Nickelodeon this year, who cares? But, if the audience likes the show, and I think we tend to forget, we get so fixated on the day-to-day running of the show, all the issues and crap you have to deal with and problems you have to solve, and you kind of forget that there is an audience at the end of it. So it's nice to be reminded sometimes that that there are children who sit down and watch what you do, and they respond to it. That's a powerful thing. And I've had people say to me, I have biracial children, and they're just so happy to see someone who looks like them on TV. And not something that you would normally think about, but that's out there, and it's powerful. So, I mean, that kind of award, I would say, means more to me than an Emmy. Now, if I were to win an Emmy, I'd be screw that. I want an Emmy.
Get out of here, kids.
Who cares about you guys? I have an Emmy here.
Who cares my Emmy? Yeah,
that's right. But no, I think it's meaningful and it's much appreciated.
Yeah. It was really wonderful. I was really happy when I read it. As I was going through the list of award winners, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's nice. Really nice. It's nice. I mean, it's always nice to win, to have some acknowledgement. We work hard,
super hard.
So it's nice to have any acknowledgement that you're doing a good job.
Well, we're not here to talk about Doc McStuffins.
Oh, that's not what I was told.
What we want to talk about today is inspiration and shows that inspire people. And what you chose, Dan, is a show called Jonny Quest.
Jonny Quest.
Tell us a bit about it there.
Jonny Quest. I had to do a bit of research.
You chose this.
I didn't want to. Well, I haven't seen it in 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want to come in totally unprepared. But Jonny Quest, Hanna-Barbera show that was done in 1964 as a prime time show. Wow. The Flintstones, I think, was the first one they had done prime time.
1960, yeah.
Yeah, and then Jonny Quest. And Jonny Quest was, I think what they wanted to do was sort of do a comic book themed kind of show. Initially, it was supposed to be, I think, Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy, with some, cheesy old pulp thing from the 30s, right? But it was that kind of thing, this sort of, globe-trotting adventure show. And they had this comic artist named Doug Wilde. He's a brilliant comic artist who worked in the industry for years. And they got him to sort of work the show along, do the the designs, create the concept, and they wanted that comic strip sensibility. And at this time, it was the early '60s, and the first Bond movies had come out, Dr. No, and I think they wanted to get that whole kind of adventure, science fiction kind of stuff in there as well. So it's kind of a mix of things, and the show itself is a typical Hanna-Barbera production, which means that there was zero budget, no production values. But, it doesn't have to look like crap, just because it's low budget. And the thing is, they managed to make it work. If you have a low budget, you get creative and you find ways to get around that, So if you watch Jonny Quest, it's a lot of held cells, a lot of reuse. They have like one walk cycle they use 50 times. Things like that. But I think the way you get around that, obviously, you have a strong story, good characters, and also I think if you have strong visuals. And the thing I always loved about Jonny Quest was, I'm a comic book guy. That was where that was my inspiration, was comics. I loved comics. And Jonny Quest was the first cartoon that looked like a comic.
Wow.
It had more depth to the drawings, more shading. They used, some spotting blacks and things like that. They actually used some of Doug Wilde's drawings, It had that look, And then the stories were interesting and exciting. One week they'd be, fighting the lizard men in the Sargasso Sea. The next they're in the Andes with the giant pterodactyl. And then there's the robot spy. There's a whole bunch of, they're always somewhere new, doing something different. So that was, I think, what appealed to me was the fact that it had this really nice visual aesthetic, this nice design, and the fact that the stories were different from the usual stuff. Most of these shows, like you talk about a show like, say, Space Ghost, which is the same studio, same general idea. And, I remember watching that as a kid. I could not tell you for the life of me any specific episode or moment or show. It's all the same damn thing. This week it's the space pirates. Next week it's the pirates from space. It's always the same damn thing, right? Jonny Quest was different. It was every week was something new, something different, and again a nice visual look and design and feel to it. So I think that's what really caught my eye and kept me watching it, And again, I haven't seen the show in 20 years.
Did you watch it again?
I went back on when we first had our discussion. I went onto YouTube and watched a few clips and took a look, and I remember that. One thing I didn't remember was how insanely violent.
It's insane.
It's amazing.
In the very first episode, one of the first things that happens is they blow up a ship with people on it with a laser. Oh my God.
I know, it's amazing. And they're always shooting guns. They're always firing guns.
So much.
And what I love is the fact that they actually animate the bullets coming out of the gun. It's just amazing.
And the arrows or whoever they're facing.
There's one episode I was looking at, I saw a clip. I forget which one it was, but Ray Spannon, the mentor hero guy, has a hand grenade, and he chucks it into a jeep full of Chinese guys, and he ducks around a corner and it's blam, and then all these bits and pieces come hopping around the corner. He just blew up a jeep full of people,
And they move on.
And then what's next,
And then they laugh at the dog doing something funny.
That's and that's it's just amazing, Like you could never ever do that now.
Even in the post credits, Ray Spannon lands a boat on two people. Just
hits
them with a boat.
It's they just literally kill whoever gets in their way.
There's people eaten by crocodiles. There's people eaten by leopards. There's people eaten by giant genetically modified lizards. He kills sharks, or he kills a panther. One guy's they're shooting at another boat. It's always boats, and they hit the gas tanker and kill everyone on board.
I know. It was an awesome show.
Yeah, seriously. I remember one bit where he whips a scorpion into like oblivion.
I know.
Just uses a bullwhip, and
I know.
It's just gone.
It's amazing. It's like there's one episode where they all, like, they're in a boat being attacked by crocodiles. Yeah. So they all, like, even the kids, like, pick up rifles and just blazing away at these crocodiles. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore.
No, you're not going to see that. I mean, it's amazing, But it's kind of sad in a way. And I get that we're trying to, make a safe culture for everybody. And we've had all the talks about violent media and everything else. And I mean, look, I don't know. I think so much of that, again, is context. What you're looking at violence. What's the context, that you're watching it in? Yeah, I grew up with that stuff, right? Like I watched that and westerns and God knows what cop shows. And let's face it, I must have seen 20 million people killed.
You're a very violent person, though.
I am. I'm just seething with rage constantly. No, I mean, I've never laid a finger on anybody in my life, and I never would. Honestly, it's hard to say. I think we've gotten to the point now, And I get why we need to protect children, and there's a lot of stuff that they need to be protected from. There's a lot of really nasty, negative stuff. But it's not all sex and violence. There's a lot of this corporatist, consumerist garbage that kids get fed. This notion that you have to conform and be a certain way and look a certain way. To me, that's more dangerous than Jonny Quest shooting a rifle at a crocodile. We were teaching kids how to be proper global citizens as opposed to just consumers. So the whole notion of what constitutes, unhealthy programming, I have very sort of mixed feelings about what's acceptable and what's not. And there's stuff. I mean, when my daughter was little, there's a lot of stuff I let her watch that people are like, oh my God, that's so violent. But it's like, well, she's not. She's smart enough to know. Like, I give her enough credit, and she was smart enough to know, and she could pick and choose what she wanted. But
now she's in jail.
And now she's doing time for manslaughter. But what can I say?
I hope she's not actually.
No. No, she's not. No, like I say, she was smart enough to know that this is real, this is not real, and we would talk about stuff. This is why that's happening, and why is that character doing that, and I think we need to give kids a bit more credit. That we're trying to make them into these sort of this homogenous mass sometimes, and they're not. We give room for individuals and people who have different points of view, people who ask questions, and I think we need more of that. So I think anything in the media that encourages kids to ask questions, to think, and like, why are we doing this? And why does it have to be this way? I'm not saying that Jonny Quest does that, but this notion that you have to sanitize everything for children, I find problematic.
Yeah. Have you tried ever worm that stuff into Doc? Like,
Well, I could go on about that. We have our standards and practices. Of course, people at the network who freak out if they're not wearing helmets when they're walking across the street. Make sure there's proper safety gear at all times.
As opposed to a panther attacking two kids in a
like you're firing live ammunition at somebody. No, the standards and tastes and I guess expectations are just totally different.
Yeah,
you could never make a show like this today. But you could say about virtually everything that you were consuming back then was insanely violent and misogynist and God knows what else. At least Jonny Quest not misogynist. There are no women anywhere to be seen in any
that's the big savior. It's not misogynist because they're not there.
Because they're just not there. They just don't exist,
There is, I think I was going to say it. I was going to bring it up, but I think the first female character that appears is 4 episodes in. And I think what's her name? Dreen or something. And she's asking Benton Quest, the dad, to go and find her dad, who's been captured by the Poho tribe in the Amazon or wherever they are. And then the next one is just a girl in the airport, and then Jade, that one character.
Jade, who's Race's old girlfriend.
And she appears. But apart from that, that's it. It's just men
pretty much
all the time.
Well, that's it.
Shooting at each other.
And I think if you're a boy of a certain age, that's the best show ever, because it's just a bunch of guys running around blowing up stuff, and there's no girls getting in the way.
No. And the girls, when they do arrive, they always kiss. There's always a kiss.
Always that kiss. Jade's a tough cookie, lives her own life, but she just wants to get married to Race and settle down. At the end of the day,
tame him.
That's all she wants. Is just want the ring on the finger and. I don't know. It is, again, a totally different time.
Very different. How old is that show now? 55 years old?
I guess. 64, 65 was, I think, the year it ran, first season it ran. Again, prime time. Now, I would have seen it on Saturday morning because it reran endlessly. And eventually wound up on all 3 American networks, apparently. It was at ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Wow.
Wound up running on all of them.
I see you went on Wikipedia.
Yes, I did. I did my 10-minute skim of Wikipedia. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
That's really cool. That's really interesting.
But it's been around, and obviously, I think as the years went on, and obviously they would trim all the problematic stuff out of it, which I found interesting. There'd be nothing left, basically, just them getting into the jet and flying somewhere. Okay, we're done, and then they go back.
I found the gold bar. Let's keep going.
What a great adventure that was.
As well as being, I don't want to talk about the problems of the show, because obviously it does have violence is one, women definitely, race is a terrible thing.
Well, that's something you notice as well.
Egyptian people, Indian people all have the same accent.
They all have these, again, they're those racial stereotypes, right?
Exactly.
That just get promoted as this is just the way, like a Haji. He's a difficult character, I guess. He is a stereotype. But again, I mean, he has agency and he's not just
really
there.
Good character, yeah.
He is a good character. You get past the turban and that kind of, sim salabim stuff that he does, that's stuff that, you look at it now and you think, really?
Oh, come on, lads. Yeah. Haji, for anyone who hasn't seen Jonny Quest, is a ward, I would say, of Dr. Benton and Race, who just is probably Johnny's best friend. Mm-hmm. An Indian boy they got off the streets of Calcutta.
Literally just said, hey, you come with us, right?
Can you do magic? Come on.
Come on, yeah.
He's the seventh son of a seventh son, so that's how they explain his magic.
Okay. But even, there's a whole bunch of Dr. Zin, who's the villain.
Yeah.
Kind of that sort of yellow peril, Fu Manchu type of character that
Which is mad. I didn't know that permeated, like that's existed centuries. It's not just, it's a very long thing. The Orient versus the Occident, East versus West. But you're right,
there's a long cultural thing, especially in the U.S., the whole panic over, white slavery and opium dens and all that kind of stuff, that racist stuff that was a staple.
I'm surprised wasn't an episode.
Jonny Quest and the white slavers. Yeah, that's where the girls come in now. We'll get girls into that episode. Yeah. But that Doctor's in. And really, like you see the design is not an overtly racist design.
Yeah, I mean,
that's actually a very nice design, and the character is not presented as this kind of Fu Manchu type. He's actually a fairly restrained character, but still there is that whole notion of the yellow peril. And I think at that time, obviously, the Americans, were very hung up on Red China and the commies taking over the world, and I think that's reflected, I think. I mean, everything is an artifact of its time, right? It's sort of, affected by what's going on around it, so.
I want to talk a bit about Doug Wilde. Mm-hmm. I've seen your work, your drawings.
Oh,
not your TV shows.
No.
Your drawings.
Yes.
And when I look at some of his work, I can definitely see an influence across that. That kind of, it's very, I've only seen what you've put on Flickr and things.
Yes, only the good stuff.
The good stuff, yeah. But I can definitely see that across the design. So when I thought about you picking Jonny Quest and then I looked at your work, I was like, okay, I can see how that influenced across. Yeah. And did it influence you as a kid, Jonny Quest?
Jonny Quest, I would think it's interesting. I would say yeah.
Yeah.
I would say one of many, but I think definitely in terms of the stories that I wanted to tell. And I've always kind of wanted to tell stories. I always wanted to be a comic book artist.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be in a position to sort of tell stories with pictures, and stuff like Jonny Quest, I think really, really resonated for me, I think because it was rooted in the real world. These are, not characters in capes. And I mean, I grew up reading superhero comics, and I mean, I did love them for a time, I've obviously grown away from
Not
that.
anymore.
Well, look at it. It's one of those things you kind of grow away from that stuff. What I like I love the medium.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good work being done, but I find it's more the stuff that's rooted in a real world, a real environment, something that you can see and relate to, and I think like Jonny Quest, it did build a world that you could relate to and you could see. I mean, that's what I like, is that kind of, world building you see, where it's a coherent universe. It's a coherent world that you can actually put yourself into, and that's the kind of stuff that I've always been interested in. And I would say in that sense, it was an influence on me. You know.
What about your artistic style?
Style is one of those things I think you find growing up is that you discover a new artist and you're trying to draw like him.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, here's Wally Wood. Wow, I'm going to draw like Wally Wood now, and then you kind of figure, I can't draw like Wally Wood, screw him, and then you find the next artist. So I think you are constantly stealing from people, and the end result is to hopefully get your own style, which is going to be an amalgam of a whole bunch of other stuff that you've learned. Like nobody wants to be, we talk about plagiarism and stealing. I tell kids, I get kids coming in sometimes who are starting off,
steal.
Yeah, steal.
Bring your parents' money to me.
Yeah, that's it. I'll tell you. But no, steal. Look at there's generations of artists who've figured it all out. They've solved all the problems that you're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So see what they've done.
Yeah.
Steal from them, learn from them, take it, add it to your collection of knowledge and move along. So yeah, I would say that there's a ton of artists that I've looked at over the years, and not just comic artists, painters and different artists, graphic artists, designers. You sort of take influences from all areas. You should be, looking at a lot of different stuff. One thing I find with kids is they get fixated on, say, anime, and all they draw is anime. And it's like, please don't draw that. That's, it's fine to look at anime and take what you can from it, but for Christ's sake, look at something else.
As well.
Please, yes. I mean, I don't want to get into my anti-anime rant.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast.
Dan's anti-anime rant. Yeah,
yes, we can do that. But again, in terms of an influence, it's there. Take what you can from it and mold it into your own and make it your own. I think that's the whole point, is you see little bits and pieces of somebody in someone else's work, but it is their work.
A Frankenstein of influence.
Well, that's what we are. We're just basically, grave robbing, essentially. We're sewing little bits and pieces of these cadavers together, and you hopefully get a nice-looking monster at the end of it. That's kind of a horrible analogy, but
it's the truth. Yeah.
That's basically, you talk about influences, and that's essentially what it is.
Let me ask you about Jonny Quest again, then. You said it was supposed to be like Jack Armstrong. I'd never heard of him before. What was that back in the...
Well, Jack Armstrong, again, one of those sort of pulp radio kind of things. You go back to the 20s and the 30s, all these radio serials, Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. And I don't know much. I assume he was like the Harvard football player, who was really smart and brave and upstanding and true, and basically when he wasn't winning the football game for Harvard, he was beating up commies or whatever.
Nazis or whatever.
And being very chaste with the girl, and that kind of stuff. It's like, Terry and the Pirates, I think is probably a better forerunner for Jonny Quest,
in terms of visual style.
In terms of visual style, but in terms of concept, and that you've got the young boy, older mentor in different locales, exotic places, having adventures. It's that similar thing, and I think was a strong influence on Jonny Quest as well. I think Hanna-Barbera was going to do it as Jack Armstrong.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But couldn't get the rights, thankfully. So I think we got a much better show out of it,
It was really good. I've got to say, I watched Jonny. I'd not seen it before. I'd seen the remake, The Real Adventures of Jonny Quest, which is around when I was...
Oh, yeah. My daughter used to watch that when she was young,
And they used to go into like Questworld, which is like CGI, and they'd have their battles. But this one, each episode, I got really excited to watch. I just found myself excited because it's not a traditional open credits.
No.
It's just all these native tribes in a boat, and then they cut it together with people running away from dragons, and there's all this fantasy sewn into the show, and then you're thrown into a world where it's actually all science. Against the fantasy, and people like Benton Quest, who are like, comes across voodoo, and it's like, all right, that's not real. Throws it out the window. It's like, well, here's a dart that you've been poisoning people with, and that's the real thing. And I do think it's definitely a product of its time, like you said.
Very much so. And you see that science. You see like they got the hydrofoils, and the hovercraft and the fancy jet planes. And I think the first kind of computers, I think you see the first kind of computers.
And laser.
It
had only just come out. I think the first laser ever made was 1960.
Yeah.
And they're using it in the show.
Yeah. So they were very much on top of that. And again, I think a lot of that is the whole Bond thing as well, trying to get in that kind of science fiction-y type action stuff. I think it is very much in the culture as well. But I think it's a mix of a whole bunch of different stuff. It's got the action adventure, the exotic locales. It's got strong characters. I think the characters are all strong, and they all work and play off each other very well. I think it's just a good, well thought out concept. I mean, there's really nothing new in it. I mean, it's all stuff you've seen before, but it's how you take elements and combine them. And make something out of it. And I think that's the strength of it, is that it's just a good, strong, solid concept.
And I think as well, like, I'd not seen anything like it ever before. Like, you're right, the renderings are so beautiful. There's such deep blacks on the characters. Now, obviously, Hanna-Barbera can be troublesome at times. Proportions are bad. The turnarounds sometimes and 3/4 are just like the eyes are kind of askew, and you're just like, okay, but you'll forgive it. You're right. I think at any stage there wasn't any more than 40 people working on the show, and that includes the producers and includes all the cast as well.
I believe it. Yeah.
It was so little. I think each show only had 4 animators.
Well, and you see it, and because there's so much reuse animation.
Yeah.
Where once you get that one walk, it's like the episode with the mummy where the mummy's walking, and that walks but you see that 50 times. And, they just flop it. He's walking that way now.
He's still coming. Yeah,
that's it. But again, that's taking the limitations of what you've got and making. I mean, it's a great looking mummy, so you don't mind.
And they used the music really well.
And the music was great in that.
It's such an action adventure show. I can't recommend Jonny Quest enough. Actually,
again, I hadn't seen it for 20 years, but it's funny. I was thinking about that. If you think of how much stuff you consume over the course of your lifetime. How many books and comics you read, how many shows you watch, how many movies you watch, how much music you listen to, literally tens of thousands of hours, you spend consuming product. How much of it sticks with you?
Yeah.
Like how much of it do you remember? I remember that episode. I remember that song. That's a book I could read again and again. There's not a lot of that.
Yeah.
Like I thinking back to I watched a ton of cartoons as a kid. I can't remember any of them. I can remember watching. That show was on. I remember that. Yeah. But to be honest, again, we talked about Space Ghosts. Is there a specific episode? I couldn't tell you.
Wow.
But Jonny Quest, there was that lizard man, that robot spider episode, and there were the dragons, and the one with the fighter planes.
Yeah, that was really good.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's that stuff sticks with you. And there's a reason for that, I think. And I mean, we all respond to different things. We react to different things. Which is the way it should be. It's just interesting. What stays with you and why. And for whatever reason, that has stayed with me. Like I say, the first thing that popped in my head when you first got in touch with me was, Jonny Quest.
It was a really good choice.
I mean, we could do a whole hour on what uninspires me if you want. We could get into that.
I think the producer's saying no there.
No, please.
Maybe. But you can see its influence, I think, across a lot of things. Obviously, the remake shows. One thing that really caught me was, you must have seen The Incredibles and Incredibles 2. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Like that is just copy-paste Jonny Quest at times with superhero stuff. Like there's a bit where in the first Incredibles they go to Syndrome's Island on a volcano.
Yeah.
And there's an episode of Jonny Quest where there's a secret base in a volcano.
Yeah.
And the guys who are, the henchmen that guard it go around these floating devices. The exact same as Incredibles, and they're wearing the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so much so that in the second Incredibles, they actually, on the TV in the background, they have clips of Jonny Quest playing. So he really references exactly what they're looking for.
Well, I think I saw Brad Bird online talking about Jonny Quest.
Wow,
and how much you love Jonny Quest.
Oh, it's so good.
So it's easy to see the connections. That was struck me when I watched The Incredibles. That's just like Jonny Quest.
That's a bit Jonny Questy, the retro future.
It's a good thing Disney owns everything.
They can reference everything.
That's it. But
even things like the Omnidroid, which is the big bad one in the first Incredibles, like how that arrives in the rocket is the same as the spider, the robot spider.
Exactly. It's a definite shout out to that for sure, which is great. I think
it's really cool.
We talked about referencing things and combining things and using things and not plagiarism at all. No, but that's what it's about. I mean, like I said, there is nothing new. Everything has been done. It's a question of how you take stuff and you combine it and expand upon it and make it new.
Let's say throughout your career, Dan, because it's gone for a while now.
I have a career, okay.
Where someone's told me that.
Wow, I have a career. That's great.
But over the course of your time,
my
servitude,
industry, yes.
Yeah. How much would you say you ever reference back to Jonny Quest?
I would say probably never.
Well, that's the show, guys.
Well, no, I'm being honest. I mean, the kind of shows I've worked on have been generally preschool. Right.
Okay,
I mean, they've been, happy bears learning about, playing together and keeping their hands to themselves and that kind of stuff.
Not pygmies versus
No. I wish to God, But no, honestly, I mean, we talked once about vision, the whole notion of a director's vision. The kind of work that we're doing, I don't know if vision applies. Basically you're given a script, you're given designs, go make the show, right? Like it's not really yours. You know, maybe if I do my own show one day, then I'll hark back to
Yeah.
Jonny Quest, and I'll probably pull. And you know, I have had ideas, you know, for shows that actually have taken aspects of that.
Wow,
you know,
yeah.
the sort of the global time hopping kind of stuff. You know, using different locales. You know. But in my day to day, there's really like Doc McStuffins is basically, you know, let's fix this broken toy and let's all have a nice song, and that's the end of it. You know, which is fine. It is what it
Sweet,
is.
yeah.
It's, you know, Jonny Quest is here, Doc McStuffins is here.
I think Jonny Quest could work again today. You know, Tintin,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. It's the exact same kind of globe-trotting, all
Yeah.
science. And if I look at things like Tintin, or as they're supposed to be pronounced, Tintin, you know, like they were sending people to the moon even before the moon launch. And,
Sure.
and obviously Hergé's beautiful rendering of it, like the sketch style is so beautiful as well.
It's lovely work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the idea of that globe-trotting adventure is something that you don't really see anymore.
No, I think it's an evergreen concept.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that ever is not doable
Yeah.
or possible. I think there's always ways to make that interesting and fresh, you know. And again, we were talking about Jonny Quest, you
Yeah.
know, rebooting or rejigging it. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's always, I think a strong concept will always work, you know. And I mean, obviously you're not going to try and redo the original. The original is of its
Yeah.
time, you know.
Yeah.
It's very much an artifact of that space and time, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't want to just kind of rehash it, you know. But I think that taking those characters, taking that
Yeah.
basic idea, expanding on it, modernizing it. I mean, let's face it, there's a whole bunch of, you know, new stuff to you know, to sort of explore and do. I think it could work really, really well. You
It's
know?
a whole new world. Like back then, even then, it was. There's never really an episode set near a metropolis. It's
No.
always these far out places where science triumphs.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And you could say, well, it's all about imperialism and colonialism. Fine.
I remember I was watching one of the episodes and I was like, oh my God, come on. You know, but this is of its time where I think Ray says something like he calls the Boho Jungle people savages.
Oh,
You know,
I know,
look at these
I know.
savages.
Yeah, there's a lot of that
Yeah,
stuff. And
but
yeah.
having said that, when they go to Dr. Ashida's island, he calls them a barbarian. You know, so there is a little bit of
Yeah,
touch
yeah.
and go, but still.
There is that back
Yeah.
and forth. And we were talking earlier about, you know, sort of modern standards
Yeah.
applied to old material, you know. I guess a lot of it comes down to intent. Do I
Yes,
think
yeah.
that Doug Wilde was a racist? I
Yes.
don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Only
He may
joking,
have been in
yeah.
the Klan for all I know. You know, I don't think his intent was to produce racist material.
Of course, yeah.
He has some kind of white nationalist agenda he was trying to push with Jonny Quest. I just think those guys lived in a specific time, and I think the culture that he had grown up on. Like, if you figure he would have been whatever, you know, in the
Yeah.
60s, he would have been a grown man. Obviously, he would have been consuming culture in the 50s and the
Yes,
40s
yeah,
and the 30s, right? We're all kind of a product of what we grow up with and what we listen to, and the fact that we can be morally above. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice to sort of be an enlightened person, and you
Yes.
should. But, you know, you are a product of your time and your culture. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So again, you know, there are things that are overtly racist, and they're intended to be racist. You know, and then there are things that come off now as racist that I don't think the creators were trying to be.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to excuse racism in any way, shape, or form. That's the minefield you walk through with this
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. You take it for what it is. Again, to me, it comes down to intent, you know, and what the creators were intending. And, you know, I don't think they were trying to be racist.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, you know, this is a time when they're obviously living in a time when the American empire is ascendant, right? America was the superpower. They were, you know, American technology and culture was taking over the world, literally. You know, Americans at that time, I think, were very much, we are number one, we are the top
Yeah.
dog. Not so much now, I don't think. But, you know, back then, I think that was part of their national character, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, growing up as a Canadian kid in that time, we were inundated with American culture.
Wow.
I mean, that's really all we had. American movies, American TV, American music, you know, to the point where the government had to basically mandate, you know, we need 35% Canadian content, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we were very much a part of that. And that mindset, I think was something that we grew up with as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at it here in Ireland. You've had how many centuries of being dominated by a bigger, stronger, more dominant culture that has tried to,
weed away.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just something that, people who live next to empires, I think, are more aware probably of the negative aspects of those empires than the actual empire people are themselves. They're just not aware, because that's just, hey, this is who we are, right? We're better than you, and we're here to civilize you. And
there's a term for it. It's Orientalism, because it's primarily focused on what happened to the Orient. But America definitely does it to Ireland. In America, if you hear about Ireland, then you get, roadblock in Ireland, and it's a picture of sheep, down the road between, and
sure.
it's just that kind of thing of it's a patronizing, rational, flexible superiority standpoint.
Yeah.
And look, it happens. You're right. It's again a really good point. Those beside the empires are
well, that's it. And not even that it's done in a sense, a negative sense. It's even more patronizing, more condescending.
Yeah. They're just not aware of it.
That's it. No, it's just kind of there. So, I think that's just the mindset that the creators had and grew up with.
And I think actually, for its time, I actually found it kind of respectful toward which is a really weird thing to say in a show that has so many race issues, toward the races they're trying to show. I forgot the word for show. The way they drew them, the way they rendered them was so beautiful. That they had a variety of culture, that in each episode you could actually tell where this person was from. Yeah. Just by how they looked and sound and what they were wearing and everything like that. And I found that really interesting, especially for something of the 60s, where you're right. Yeah. They would have consumed what Western audiences assumed these races were, rather than actually going out and researching. And that's why I really like Tintin as well, because Hergé went out and researched all the things. Yeah. And I feel like they probably did something similar on Jonny Quest,
I mean, again, it's creating a sense of place.
Yes.
I think the adventures work, the shows work because there is that sense of place. Yeah. It is not just generic jungle, generic African natives. It's a specific place. I think that goes a long way towards making it happen. Is that you need to make a believable environment, a believable world. Yeah. Once you buy the fact that we are in this place, then whatever happens in the story, you can go along with it. Yeah. And I think that's important. I mean, it's the characters and the environment, and I think a lot of effort was put into making the environments, which is not just the sets, it's the people in the environment, sort of making them distinct and making them unique.
Visually, anyways.
Well, visually, look at...
Audio, not so much.
Well, look, we could walk down this trail forever,
really could.
It is what it is,
and it's a really good show.
It is a really good show. You have to kind of look at it for what it is and judge it on its merits. Yeah.
And now would you go back? Would you bring it to your work if you had the opportunity?
Well, if I was doing my own stuff, yeah. I mean, work for hire, which is what generally I do. There's really no room for it. We're doing very,
Maybe Doc will grow up someday and go on a globe-trotting. Doc McStuffins,
That would be nice. I mean, and this season we're doing more of that. We're sort of taking Doc out of the
backyard.
I don't know if I can talk about this or not. It's probably forbidden. Never mind. It's all exactly the same
so
as
close.
It's all exactly the same as it was. Nothing new to see here.
I'll say nothing.
No, it's I mean, you work mostly in preschool, and let's face it, there are. And especially now that they're so aware of the educational content, we have to promote strong social values. That's really what the shows are about now. Yeah. We're telling the story, but you have to incorporate the educational aspect, social aspect has to be in the story. Especially with Disney, are so afraid of any kind of litigation. Any problematic material, anything that looks remotely dangerous or anything else is gone. Right. So you have a very rigid narrow set of parameters.
Tight walk.
Tight
rope.
Yeah. So your stories tend to sort of hew to a very specific line, in the way you treat the story. So a show like Jonny Quest, where they're running around like maniacs, I mean, there are probably shows like that. I have not worked on them, which is, I guess the big regret I've had. But you work on what you work on, right?
Yeah.
So I said if I could always do my own show, my own concept, it would probably be very much like that. A lot of running around and action and comedy in different locales and weird stuff. And that's what I like,
Racism.
Well, no, I would remove the racism, try
add more women.
Try not to have, any racism in it and no misogyny.
Try not. But you know me, it just slips in there.
It's there, it's there. No, it's not there. No, look, I'd love to, as I said, we take these things with us. And even if you're not conscious of them, like it's not, must do my Jonny Quest thing now, But in the back of your mind, that stuff is there. And it bubbles up and it comes out, and it's always there. I think that's the way influences work. I think if you're aware of them, that's when you get pastiche, and that's when you get plagiarism, when you're so aware of what you're doing. It's when you're not aware, it's just kind of in there. And I think that's when it works.
I've got to thank you, Dan, because again, like I'd not seen the original Jonny Quest, so it was a wonderful gift to sit down and watch them all again. So I really, really appreciate that.
I'm glad. Yeah, it was interesting for me to go back and look at them again, because it had been ages since I'd seen them, even thought about them. And I was just like, wow, this looks great. And one thing that struck me, I want to talk about process or anything, but just how leisurely the pacing is. It's just like you're watching the one with the lizard man and the first bit with the ship getting blown up by the laser. It's just they really take their time and they build that up, and it's like our show, the pacing is like bang, 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 and it's not a slam bang action show, but even the pacing is so much quicker. And I find watching that show, they give it time to breathe. Let's move it along. We'll build some suspense here. We'll build it up, and then it'll happen. So that's what I found interesting.
Sometimes for me, actually, I did notice that it could take them 16 minutes of a 24-minute show to get to where the bad guys are. Or even before they even start to uncover the plot. They could be just swimming around somewhere.
Sure, just goofing around, and they, those little character moments and those little beats and things. But I mean, they're half hour, 25 minutes.
25 actually,
25. I think we're down to 22 now.
And that would be 2 episodes of Doc, wouldn't it? Because they're 11 episodes.
So you have
11 minutes. Not
basically,
11.
you have 11 minutes. You have a lot of stuff to cram into 11 minutes, right? So you're really keeping it brisk. It's nice to sort of have the room to kind of let the show breathe and kind of build, and it's interesting to see that. Like I say, for me, not having seen the show for 20 years, it was kind of cool to go back and look at them. It really opened my eyes.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and Jonny Quest. I don't know what else to say apart from thank you very much.
You should have the Jonny Quest theme music.
Oh
you
yeah,
should play that now.
We're actually going to go out and just start shooting guns. Start firing arrows. We throw rocks down on the local savage tribes.
There's enough of them around here.